Good morning. Today we're going to talk about Rule 13 proceedings, and this is to help with orders and just some other information in general. If you have any questions anytime, please always feel like you can reach out and talk to me. If I don't know the answer, then I'll talk to someone at the indigent department to help us get the answers. You may see my eyes cutting around a little bit. Sorry, I've not done this before, so it's new to me. Hopefully I'll learn some better ways to handle some things like this in the future. But I thought it would give you an opportunity to be able to get a CEU that you wouldn't have to pay for if you're a licensed court reporter. And if you're not, it could be some information that you could use just in general to help, like the recording section. Okay, so what I want to do is I have a little PowerPoint presentation that I'm going to bring in here. And we'll just kind of go through this. Okay. Rule 13 proceedings. Rule 13 proceedings. Oh, and my first slide. Sorry about that. Don't you wish you were there instead of going through this? Sorry. I thought that was such a pretty picture. So that's why I put it in there. Okay. And hopefully you can hear me okay. My voice is cutting out a little bit this morning. So Rule 13 proceedings. A while back, Joe Bird asked me to do a podcast with him, and he just wanted to talk about some things to do with appointed counsel, and then also bring in some of the court reporter part of that, invoicing, and just some other general things. So I'll play that as part of this, and then we'll kind of break it down a little bit more after that. But Joe Bird, you've probably gotten some memos from him if you've done some of this before, like either the preliminary hearing recordings, or if you're a licensed reporter for the TPR hearings, depositions for the hearings, and transcripts and stuff where it gets appealed. You've probably gotten some information, emails and things from him before. He's the manager of the indigent department, and he's really been working hard with the appointed counsel to try to help us all out too, so we can get better orders the first time around. And I will also attach a copy of an order that he has given me that we can give to attorneys if they ever come to you and ask anything about preparing the order, motion the order. You can just email them this and they can go from that as a guideline. Okay, so I'm going to play that for you. It lasts about 15 minutes. Okay. Take just a
Welcome to Appointed Counsel, a podcast presented by Tennessee Court Talk for those involved in indigent representation. I'm Joe Bird, lead attorney for the Indigent Services team of the Tennessee Administrative Office of the Court. Episode 6, Court Reporter Expenses. Well, part of the regular practitioners under Rule 13, appointed counsel, will know something about the need for court reporters. And today, for our podcast, we have Lisa Angel with us. Lisa, we're glad to have you here on our podcast, Appointed Counsel, today. Tell us a little bit about your background and what is your role here at the AOC?
I've been a court reporter for over 25 years. I was a court reporter through civil and then through criminal. Criminal's about 14 or 15 years of criminal court reporting. And then now I'm the court reporter manager for the state of Tennessee for all criminal courts, court reporters.
And what does that entail when you say that you're the court reporter manager? What does that mean?
That means I help them with different issues that come up, questions about invoices, or as in this case, Rule 13 type invoices. Also, I help with the BIS equipment that's in the courtrooms. As far as all of the proceedings are recorded, then we keep a history of that for years to come if something were to come back on that. So anything pretty much to do with court reporters, that's what I do.
You know, I'm licensed to practice in Michigan and Florida, in addition to Tennessee. And in those states, at least in Michigan, as I recall, each court had its own hired court reporter that took care of any needs for recording a hearing and then eventually producing a transcription. Here in Tennessee, we use more private court reporters a little bit. Can you kind of give us, with your experience, before we get into our talk about Rule 13, give us an overview of how court reporters work here in Tennessee?
In Tennessee, there's civil court reporters that are licensed court reporters, and they work in circuit court and any other arena other than criminal court. And they can work in criminal court also. And then we have the criminal court reporters, and they can both overlap. Really, it's pretty much like freelance work is what it is, or a sole practitioner attorney that would be working just for themselves. And they can work in different courts and also depositions and all kinds of things. Anywhere someone wants to take down a written record for a board hearing, things like that, they do all of that. And in criminal court, we have court reporters we have a few officials that we still have in the state of Tennessee, but most of our court reporters now are contract court reporters. And some are designated reporters. That means that they work for certain judges assigned to a certain courtroom. And then some just go in different districts or different counties within the district. They may follow a judge like that. And then some kind of float from courtroom to courtroom and help out as needed.
Now, something that you said there, the difference between official court reporters and contract court reporters, that was actually new to me coming to the AOC, because in my private practice, I would hire outside court reporters to come and do depositions, set up for hearings, take care of trials, those kinds of things. Tell us the difference between official court reporters and contract court reporters.
Official court reporters work for the same judge all the time. They're always in the same courtroom, and they're also an actual employee of the state of Tennessee, where the others would be contract and they can go from court to court. But some do also stay assigned with one courtroom. So that's the difference. They're actually an employee of the state.
So, Lisa, this podcast is for practitioners. Usually what I mean by that are attorneys, interpreters, could be court reporters that might be listening, but it's mainly for those who represent indigent clients. And just like any other litigation, the work of the court reporter is essential in our cases. We sent a memo out August 15th of 2023. It's actually on the AOC website. People want to go to tncourts.gov. They can see on the IST page, they'll be able to see that memo. But it provides a great deal of information, but it's equally important for court reporters to know some of that information, right?
Yes, I tell the court reporters to ask if the client is indigent, and that before doing the transcript to make sure you have the AOC approved order from the attorney.
Yeah, I've run into a few since I've been here where the attorney didn't know that we have specific rules as it applies to court reporters and getting reimbursed for or getting the court reporters paid under Rule 13. So we saved a sample copy of an order for a transcript on the website too, tncourts.gov, so folks can take a look at that order, not only for the attorneys to look at it, but for the court reporters to make sure they've got that in hand before they start any work. Before we dive in, I just want to make sure we understand as we organize it, and I think really the work of court reporters sort of breaks down into two categories. It is the appearance, showing up, taking down the testimony, getting it recorded, and then it's the transcription of the work. Is that about fair, accurate description, you think?
Yes, that's right.
So can you provide us some of the essential parts of the orders that we were just talking about that you're telling court reporters need to be part of those orders?
Yes. When they get the order from the attorney, it's a good idea to look over it and make sure that the estimate that's provided there is enough to cover the cost of the transcript. And a lot of times the attorneys will ask the court reporters ahead of time to give them an estimate, and that's really good for attorneys to do. We would like to try to keep them from having to go back and ask for more funds if it's not enough, especially in some of the hearings. That could be the case. And also in the order, it would need to put copies, if applicable, if there's something they need copies of, another copy of the transcript for one of the other attorneys. Everything needs to be listed in the order. Also, if they need copies of the exhibits, sometimes that happens, not that often. But just in case, we need all of that put in there so it can be pre-approved. And then we won't have to go back and forth with corrections and additions. And the invoice itself will need to have the number of pages and by the rate of the AOC, which is $4. Then it totals out. It would have the case information and the attorney's signature on the invoice itself. And then you would send in the invoice and the copy of the pre-approved order together, and it would be logged in and sent over to the Indigent Department for processing.
I think the order that we put on the tncourts.gov website actually has some of that information that you're talking about, like the number of pages. It's $4 per page. and it's the original and one copy. And if they don't put the amount that you're suggesting, we put a kind of a default amount in there, and I think it's $500.
Right.
And so they need to, though, give us an estimate. And we don't mind if they factor in a little bit more, then the final invoice can be a little less. But like you said, we don't want the court, and we don't want them having to ask for additional monies. We certainly don't want them to double it. If it's an estimated $600 transcript, we don't want them to put $1,200, but we just don't want them going back and asking for more. So we actually put some of that information in the order that we've got posted on the website too. And so you sort of kind of put it all together, send it over to us. And then, as you know, our platform for processing payments is known as ACAP. And it wasn't set up to process the claims for court reporters originally. And so it requires this really labor-intensive manual process to get the claims loaded into ACAP so that then we can transmit them over to F&A, Finance and Administration, so that the payments can be processed. And we've tried various ways of trying to address these claims to get them done as timely as we can, but we can't stay within the 30-day time frame, really, that we do for attorney online claims.
I usually tell the court reporters that payments are generally run about 45 days on the Rule 13 invoices. So that way they won't be looking for it like at the 30 days.
And just so you know, and some of our listeners, if they are court reporters, they may want to know that I am trying to look at a solution for that, but it probably won't be something that will happen within the next few months. It might be in a year or two, but we are trying to come up with a software answer to some of that. Is there anything that you would want appointed attorneys to know about working with court reporters as we're talking about their preparation of transcripts?
Yes, we really need them to let the court reporter know ahead of time if the case involves an indigent party. And the reason is the court reporter is supposed to have the pre-approved order before they do the transcript. And also in like certain hearings, they would have to have that order in order to be able to do that.
We've run into a few. I think I've come over to your office and talked a few times about attorneys who had a court reporter show up who didn't have a contract with us, wasn't approved, and then wouldn't take $4 per page. They wouldn't take the rate. And they really got themselves in a fix because I can only approve the amount that's been approved by the court. So it's really important for their sake, as well as for the court reporter's sake, that they make sure. What about prior to preparing the transcript, when they make their appearance at hearings or proceedings? What about that process?
It's just like before preparing a transcript. They will also need to make sure they get a pre-approved order for that before they attend a TPR hearing and then other hearings that would fall under Rule 13, because that needs to be approved before they actually go through the hearing itself.
And there are certain appearance rates that apply?
Yes, there are. On the order that the attorney gives you, it should have what you will be actually turning in your invoice for, which would be $350 for a day, $175 for a half a day. And then you can also say, if you don't know how many days that the hearing is going to take or trial is going to take, it could say for the amount of days, half days, it could say per day until the end of the hearing. And also, if it's something you're going to be doing out of county, the mileage rate right now is 0.67 cents per mile. That would need to be included in the order. And then it would be a good idea, if it's one of those cases that looks like it may take a little while, to go ahead and include $25 per hour if it's over 8 hours. If any of those things aren't listed that you think might be applicable, let the attorney know, and then they can get it pre-approved before the date of the hearing and make sure they give you a copy of that new order with any changes. So just kind of look over the order if they give you one and see what's on there. And if any of those are missing, then just ask them if they'll go ahead and fix that at the time. It will save time in the long run. Also help things flow a little bit smoother. And then also you could bring your invoice. If you know it's going to be all day or a half a day, you could even bring your invoice with you to court for like the appearance fee and get the attorney to sign it there. So you'll kind of be a step ahead of getting it processed. Or you could make a form invoice that you could neatly fill in while you're in court. But the goal is, whenever possible, is to have the attorney sign your invoice in court. If you're just there for a court appearance, that way you won't have to wait on emails going back and forth, and it'll just streamline the processing procedure.
And just like we talked about the transcripts, I'm sure the plea from the court reporters or from you in particular, so they don't get into Dutches, to the attorneys, please, court reporters, ask if it's indigent, and please, attorneys, tell the court reporter, be honest, and tell them if their client's indigent, because that helps out in the long run, doesn't it?
Right, it does. It helps with the timeline, And it'll also help between going back and forth with emails and different things. And also, it could stall a hearing or something if it's not pre-approved and the court reporter can't do it or maybe doesn't have a contract or something too.
Well, I think we've given them the transcript order and an order for appearance on the tncourts.gov website. And you're a great resource for court reporters to connect with when we have some issues, and you and I interface regularly. I appreciate you taking the time today, being with us, Lisa. And if you need to take a look at some of those orders, whether you're an attorney or if you're a court reporter, just check it out, tncourts.gov.
So on that podcast, he talked about the TPR hearings, and there are sometimes depositions for the TPR cases. So those, and sorry, let me back up. This is just like the overview of the TPR hearings, depositions for TPR cases, and recordings that are asked to be transcribed. Preliminary hearings, detective interviews, on location interviews, witness statements, just kind of about the type of things that you'll be asked to do. Sorry about that. You're getting it live, so I don't know how to go back and take that out yet. So I'll just have to give it to you raw. You'll have to just give me some grace and hang on a minute. Okay. So the next one is for TPR hearings and depositions. They are hearings that are held outside of criminal court. So because they're outside of criminal court, they are things that you have to be a licensed court reporter to be able to do. So licensed as in through the state of Tennessee. The TPR stands for, we throw it around a lot, but it's termination of parental rights. Sometimes it could be that they have criminal charges. It could be neglect charges. It could be abuse, other reasons that they go through and actually terminate the rights of parents sometimes. And that's what these hearings are for. Even if they're in jail, then they have these hearings just like court hearings for criminal court. And sometimes they'll do depositions of the parties, and they'll have that pre-trial. And that would also have to be a licensed reporter to do that as well. And then once through that, they'll have transcripts that they'll need the transcripts to be able to keep going and be prepared for trial. And then the transcripts also for after the trial's concluded and the judge has their ruling, then if either side wants to appeal that, then they'll have to order the transcript from there. And we'll talk about that a little bit more in a minute. Okay, so on these, it's like all the Rule 13 cases that we have. You have to have prior approval. For the TPR hearings, that is supposed to be done before the date of the hearing, and the attorney should provide you with that. Any reporters that take those, they also have to have an AOC contract because that's agreeing to the $4 a page is the reason why we do it that way. And because we process the payments for those hearings. Now, there are some private attorneys who handle those cases too. And, they make arrangements with court reporters just like other civil type things. They make arrangements with the court reporters. But it's still a good idea when they ask you to take the case for them or to appear for trial for that, to ask them if there's an indigent party on the other side. You just need to know ahead of time as far as like the court appearance, if they're going to share the appearance cost. Even though it's shared, the one with the indigent counsel, we need to have that pre-approved, that it's going to be shared in the per diem for that. As far as the transcript goes, they can do that after the hearing, but before they request a transcript, if there's an appeal done on the case. So you'll have time for that. It doesn't necessarily have to be in that original order, but sometimes, I've told attorneys to go ahead and put it in there if needed. And then if it's needed, you've already got a head start on that. But otherwise, if it's not in there, or if it comes to an amount higher than at the time after the hearing, when they tell you it's going to be appealed, then you can give them your estimate. And if it's going to be higher, go ahead and let them do that amended order. And just like on the preliminary hearings, everything else, figure it up and estimate over some, so they won't have to go back and do that amended order. Because if they go back and do an amended order, if there's not enough charges or it doesn't include everything you need it to, then what they have to do is go back and do a new motion, prepare the new order for the judge to sign, present it to the judge to get signed, send it to the AOC to be approved, and then get it back to you. So just to help out with that, anytime we can get it, have everything figured in there, it's going to make it much easier process. So on the prior approval for the TPR hearings, depositions, for the appearance, and for transcripts of all of these, they're going to be based on the same rates. So in the motion and order, which I will have samples of those attached that you can give to attorneys if they ask you. But it's $175 for a half day, $350 for a full day, just like it is in court. And also on there, when the attorneys I've been talking to, I've told them, go ahead and put on there on the order until the conclusion of the trial or deposition, because sometimes they get continued or they may take longer than they think it's going to take. And that way you're covered as far as your appearance fee. It's going to cover the amount of days that's needed to get that done. And then also if you're traveling out of county, you can also have on there mileage of 0.67. So, I tell them, go ahead and put that on there. If the court reporter has to travel out of county, that you're entitled to ask for mileage. And if the case ends up going longer than 8 hours in one day, then you can have $25 an hour overtime. And these are things that I suggest to attorneys now that I talk to put in orders. So it's things you should be seeing on the orders if you're getting them. And if you're not, and it's ahead of time, and you think, okay, I am going to need this mileage, whatever included in there, then go ahead and let them know. Let them get that fixed before you have to go. So when you get ready to turn your invoice, you'll have a good order, a motion order to turn it with it so we can get it on through the process. On the transcripts for the estimates, for the TPR hearings, you can figure it up and go by the way you do your estimates. But if they ask me and we're talking about it, I will tell them to go ahead and include $1,500 a day for transcripts. That's based on 375 pages, which should cover most things. But like I said, the transcript part, they won't request a transcript, at least for the TPR hearing, until afterwards. And you'll have time to know how long it was, how long your days were, and to give them a better estimate if you need to. But as long as that's enough, you don't have to worry about changing it. You would be covered if it's overestimated some on that. Okay. And then also, if it happens to be some kind of case where there's going to be another copy needed, say there's a guardian ad litem involved, then it would be 50 cents a page. So I tell them to put that on there, and that's the reason that that's on there, because it would cover that if it's included in the order. But if not, and they wanted it, then they would have to turn around and ask for a copy of it. If it's another private attorney, and they'll need on the other side, and they would on like an adopted parent side or something like that, then they would need to just ask you for the copy, and you work out your agreements and stuff for the copyright for them if that's needed later. Okay. And another part of the Rule 13 is preliminary hearings. So preliminary hearings, interviews, detective interviews, just could be some other interviews, witness interviews, different types of interviews that you might get requested for, like pretrial discovery for cases. So on those, you'll also need the pre-approved order. And if you've already done them, you know this, and sorry about that, but we'll just go through it for the ones that haven't, and also so we can go through it for you to get your CEU for the class. So pre-approved order, it'll be the same thing. You need to have an estimate of the cost for your transcript. If you don't put it on there, Joe says that they default to $500, and that's the amount they'll put on there. So most preliminary hearings would be covered under that. If it's a murder case, it may not be, because they're a lot of times longer. So if someone hands you one and wants you to do, you can ask them the type of case it is, or if they know how long it is, so you can just make sure you give them a good estimate. I know we don't know how much blank space there may be, how fast they're going to talk or this or that. So that's why we estimate just a little over, and just to make sure it's covered. And if they don't have a clue and it's like a murder case or something like that, several cases, then you may just, if they give you the recording, just say, let me see how long it is, and put it in, check it out, and then go back and give them your estimate to put in there. And on the orders, they don't have to necessarily specify a court reporter's name, but they do need to put on there that it's going to be transcribed by an AOC approved court reporter. And that's to be able to get for their indigent client, for the indigent funds, which makes it be a Rule 13. And same thing on this, extra copy, 50 cents. It could be co-defendants, on there. And maybe the other one wants to get a copy. You could do that. And they're also done at $4 a page. Okay. So on a pre-approved motion and order, we may have just covered most of this, but what they will do is when they put it together, then they can go by that form, like when I'll attach. If anybody ever asks you, and if you have it where you can get to it and you want to send it to them, you can, or you can tell them to contact me or Joe, and we'll send them one that they can use as a rough guideline to do for their motion and order. So they will fill out the motion and order after it's completed with all the information that we put before that they need to put in there so it can be approved. Then they'll give it to the judge. That would be the judge of the court where the hearing's going to be held at, or the case is at. If it's a preliminary hearing, all of these at the early stages, it will be the court that the case is going to, is where it's going to, the criminal court judge is the one that would need to approve that. Or in some cases, I know we have civil, maybe under the circuit courtroom, but it's still a criminal court judge that will need to approve that. And then after they approve it, they'll get it back to the attorney, and then the attorney will need to send it to the indigent department to get the approval on that. When they get the approval, they'll send that back to the attorney, and the attorneys I'm talking to, I'll let them know, make sure they give that to the court reporter, because you'll have to have it when you send in your invoice. And then that's where I was talking about the estimate of the pages, so you can give them a cost. We just want to make sure that they don't, let's see my slide, make sure that they don't underestimate, so you've got to come back later and do another amended order. Sometimes it can't be helped. That's just going to happen. But every time we can prevent it from happening and just go on and do it the first time with the one order, then it's just going to make it a faster process. Anytime we have to go back and forth, it's going to make it go over that 45 days, most likely. Okay, so we want to make sure we've got that so they don't have to go back and do their orders. Okay, the process of sending in your invoices. So on invoices, we'll talk about the TBRs first. And the invoice, if you have those, you would do those invoices, and for the depositions for TBRs, you would have those invoices, which is like your personal invoice. But be sure to have a breakdown of the charges on that invoice, because we won't be able to, we'll have to go back and ask for that if it's not on there. So you'll need to have like the $4 a page. If you're doing, excuse me, asking for mileage, it'll have to have the miles. Sorry, I'm trying to lose my voice. It'll have to show that on there too. So I have to have the mileage amount and total. It just broke down for everything that you're including on there on your invoice. So you would send that in along with the pre-approved order and motion. And if you could send them in the same email, that would help a lot as far as processing. When I get them in together like that, I can just go ahead and do the things I need to do to it and send it over a lot quicker than going back and getting the order or having to get the order from someone else. So if you have it and you can, which, they should be giving it to you, if they're not, you may want to ask for it just for the fact of you want to make sure everything's covered that you've got on your invoice. You don't want surprises of something us turn around saying, no, I'm sorry, that's not on there. We can't do it. We've got to do an amended order. So, but anyway, if you can, send those in together, and I'll go through and do the checks that I have to do on it and everything. And I'll try to mark the things that I can to help the indigent department when they look at it. So it will help them to be able to get through that invoice and order a little bit faster. There's other things that they have to also check for that I don't have to check for. So that's part of the process. And we'll talk just a little bit more about that in a minute. But just email them to me. And then when I email them over to the indigent department, I will also copy either regular copy or blind copy. I do it both ways. No particular reason, but I do it both ways. So I'll send you a copy of that where it goes over. So that will give you the day that it's sent to them. And then if any reason we have to check a status or anything else along with the invoice, it'll have the date that we sent it over, and it'll have everything together, and it will make it a lot easier for them to go back and try to see what's going on and pull the information up on it. Okay, now the indigent department processes. One day, I don't have it handy, and it's not something you necessarily want to see, but they had given me the different steps that they have to go through of their processes. And there's different people in the department that has to do different steps of that. As they go through it, they log it about what step they're at. Part of the reason they do that, if they start going through a certain process and there's an issue with where they're at the process, say something's not in the order that's on the invoice, so that's something that might stop it at a certain step. And so they'll log things by steps, and that's why they do that. But one of the things they do is verify the types of charges and just some other type of things that's not always even on the motion and order. They'll go back and verify those along with if you're already registered in the ACAP system. If you're not and you think you may be interested in doing some of these hearings or recordings or something in the future and you want me to check and see if you're registered in ACAP, you can let me know. So what that is they have a separate system than we do. And so their information, they have it up, they'll put it on 2 screens and start looking through the information they have. When they get ready to start processing it, they put it in ACAP, which is what should be sending you out, triggering sending out email messages and stuff like that when something's going to be paid. And but they'll go through that, make sure you're set up in ACAP. If you're not, then they'll call me and we'll go through the process of getting you set up in ACAP, and I'll give them the information they need for that. So I'll try to remember and ask when I get different ones in if you've not done one before, or if you do and you want to check, like I said, it's your first time, you may want to let me know. Then we'll go ahead and make sure that you're set up in ACAP before that process starts going. So they'll go through the different steps of verification that they do, and then they'll go through the final approval. And that's right before it goes over to be put into the ACAP, and then it gets sent over to F&A for the payments. They also have to put it in their system, and then the payments can be sent out from there. We do have a new person who's working in the indigent department now for court reporter claims, and it's really going well. If he starts coming through and sees that there's something missing or a piece of information he needs or whatever he's processing it, he'll just email me. Well, he's got everything up. I'll try to get the information as quick as I can. So you may get phone calls, text, emails about this, pretty quick while he's working on it. And if it's something that we can answer fairly quick, then he can just keep going through that process. We're just trying to keep from things being just taking longer, to process. And if there are issues, to try to get everything straightened out with them as quick as possible so we can just keep moving through the process and be able to process the payments and be able to get them to you as quick as possible. So the conclusions on this, we're hoping that it'll help streamline the process and try to keep from having as many amended orders, motions and orders, because we already know that's going to take days extra and sometimes longer, depending on how busy the attorneys and judges, and then be able to get together, get that done, and sit up with the industry department, to get signed and get approved and go back. And I've had this question before, and I understand the need for what they're saying that we need to do with these. At one time, we could send like the invoices to, or the orders to someone in particular. The reason why we don't do that, for one, is they want me to be able to log it, keep up with any information on it, because if something comes back, they'll have a lot harder time trying to track that than I could through our system. So that's part of why they want that done. And I might be able to spot something on the invoice side, some of the order side, that we'll be able to get answered quicker and go ahead and get it sent to them with everything that we know we can do, unless they have a question coming back later. So that's why we do that. And if something comes up and you call along with, I'll send you a copy of the email that'll show that on there, then I can trace it back to that as well, and we can find out about it. And Joe's also really working with the appointed counsel. He's working with the appointed counsel and new attorneys too. He's going out and talking to them and sending information and trying to get a lot of information out there for them about the Rule 13, about the orders being pre-approved and everything that they need to be able to do that. And so the next thing would be, if you have any questions at all about this or anything else that I can help you with, I can't, then I'll find someone who can help us and get the answers for you. But on the Rule 13, invoices, orders, whatever, you can call me, email me, or you can have the attorneys get in touch with Joe if they have questions about the orders and getting those done and everything. But it's just going back to, we're trying to look for ways to help with the processes, to help speed up payments as much as possible. And every time we can do that, maybe keep one time of having to go back and look at things, then, it's just going to help everybody out. But sometimes things are going to happen. So don't ever worry. Something happens and we have to call you about something, because it's just going to happen to anybody, everybody. So, it's fine. Don't worry about it at all. We're just trying to do everything we can to check over things and help every time we can. So as you're doing your invoices, if you have any questions, you can call me. If you have someone contacting you saying that they want to do a Rule 13 hearing or they have a trial, you can call or have them call me if you want to for that. But they are supposed to have those orders done before the hearing. We've had a case or two where they have not, and they have gone back and done them pro tunc. I said that right. They have gone back and tried to assist with that in order to get the court order paid. But it's not something, I don't know how long they will let us do that, but we have done it in the past when this come up, because sometimes a court reporter may get asked by a private retained counsel, and they're not going to know that there's an indigent attorney there representing an indigent client. So whether it's splitting into per diem, which would be the main thing that day, you know, they're not going to be prepared for that to happen on that day if there's not an order. So it's a good idea when someone asks you to do a hearing like that or depositions, because it's going to be the same thing. It's only going to be able to be paid at the AOC rate. Even if there's two attorneys, say one taking attorney he's a private counsel, well, you can charge him your regular rate, but for the indigent counsel to get their copies and say for their opponents, then it's going to have to fall under the indigent rates. And for a copy of the one that the private attorney takes, it also falls under the indigent rates. So you need to know up front. So if it's a TBR case, that's a good sign right there. Depositions, trial, anything. It's a good sign to ask them, are any of the parties indigent? Because just because the hiring attorney, is paying for it, it can still cause a problem for you down the road. So go ahead and just ask them. And that way the other side can go ahead and get their order and things in for that ahead of time too. So it will all work out for you much better in the end. And again, I know I've told you over and over, but if you have any questions and you can email me, call me, text, anything at all I can do to help, I'm happy to do. And on this, I will attach to here a copy of the simple order, the motion and order that you can give out to attorneys, or if you just kind of want to look at it. This is one that Joe sent out that he said was a good order. And but then also remember, we do want to make sure it's got the per diems, have it set for until it's concluded, and then also for your mileage. If it's going to be out of your county, it's a good idea for that to be in there already, so you won't have to worry about that. And the estimate for it, if it's a trial, you may want to go ahead and use that, and just so you'll have something. If it's just a one day, then you already have everything you need. You won't have to wait for another amended order and all that to be able to approve and stuff, to be able to start on the transcript. Once they give it to you, you'll be ready to go. So I'll send over copies of those examples for the motion and order. I've also got just like a little sheet that has some of this written down that I've got, and I'll send that to you too. Just some of the breakdowns of things. And remember, on your invoices, on your private invoices, have it broken down, and it has to say how many pages at $4 a page, like that. And if it's a transcript on like your preliminary hearings, you can put that on just one of AOC's regular transcript request for that. And with your invoices, your private invoices, the attorney does need to sign it. After you have everything prepared for that, just send it over to them by email, get them to sign it, and then send that back in with your motion and order, and then we'll get them processed. But I'll send you in kind of a little sheet where I just wrote some of these things much quicker than what we've gone through here today. So, if you don't do any for a while and then you want to pull it back up later and look at it, then you can go back and look at it later, and it'll give you just a quick little thing. And I also will be sending you, because we're doing this for a CEU opportunity, I'll also be sending you a sheet. It's got, I believe, 9 questions on there. That's real easy for you to do. And it also has to have a survey to be able to get a CEU, according to what the board says, to be able to qualify. So I'll also send you that. And I think it's just got 4 questions on it. And I'll send you those. And then when you send me that back, the questions answered and the survey, sorry, send me those back. Then I'll send you the certificate for this, and then just keep it in with your file, and you'll be able to qualify for 1 CEU for this class. And if there's any other questions you have, anything you can think of, maybe you've done this before, and you think, oh no, you forgot to talk about that, feel free to let me know, and I'll share it with other people as well. I think that pretty much covers it. But we do have to have the attorney's signature on those invoices. So, and with your regular form, they're going to sign those already. The only other thing I may not have covered would be if it's for an appearance in court for the TBR cases. On those, you do need to do your personal invoice for that and not one of our court invoices. The indigent department says it's a little bit more confusing when they get that other invoice. And feel free to take that to court with you. I said that in that interview, I think. Take it with you. If you know how long it's going to be and you want to print it out, bring it with you. If you have a form of your own invoice that you can write in the amount when the court's done that day and just hand it to the attorney, get them to sign it, and then you're ready. You don't have to send it back to them or anything after that. You can just send it to me along with their motion order that they have given you that's approved. So, but again, if you have any other questions or anything, just let me know. And thank you for your patience. I haven't learned how to edit or anything, so we just had to go straight through this. And I really want to hold you up of having a chance to be able to have any other CEUs for free, for sure, to be able to, so I can spend time on them instead of going back through and doing that until I am able to dig deeper and learn how to do it, to go back in and make some other edits and corrections and things. But I'm working on a few others, just so you know. I'm trying, if you're like me and procrastinate sometimes before you're looking to get the last extra CEUs that you need, I will have some more classes on that. And if you're interested in what I'm trying to work on, you can let me know and I'll let you know what I'm got going that I'm trying to get out there. Will be some, the last one that I have will probably be the week of May 20th, which is cutting it a little bit closer, but the person that is helping me with that part of that interview isn't available until that time. So it will be then. But I appreciate all you all do. I know you have a hard job. You know, I know you have to take in a lot when you're sitting in court. I know the conditions aren't always the best, but just want you to know you're appreciated. So to me, that's what I think. And it says the silent hero of the courtroom, because most of the time, you know, y'all are. I keep saying me too, but y'all are sitting in there. And most of the time quiet, but if you ever feel that you have to speak up some to be able to get something clarified, then, you know, you may want to talk to your judge and see. Some are different, you know, with how they want to run their courtroom, but, you know, most of them, I believe, definitely would want you to do that if you need to. Need somebody to repeat an answer. If you can't hear them, you know, if they're talking too quiet, backing away from the microphone, or something going on, talking over each other, some things like that. If you find that you have a problem like that very much, I would just talk to the judge and say, you know, when this happens, what is the best way that you want me to handle it? Like some judges may want you to look to them and let them straighten it out, and some just will let you do that. So it's probably good if you have that kind of situation very much to talk to the judge and just see what they say as far as the best way they want to handle it. Because you don't want to, you know, go too far one way or the other without kind of knowing what they want. But I believe most do want a good record, and they want to know, and they rely on the court reporter to be able to get that record. So I think it's, you know, something that we need to do sometimes, to go ahead and let the people's voice be heard when you need to. And one other last thing, for sending out for CEUs, for, even though it's for our criminal court reporters, if you know of anyone that's a civil court reporter, hasn't ever done any criminal work before, I could also send this out to them and they can go through it and be able to get a CEU for it also. That's one of the stipulations for me to be able to do this for our court reporters. It has to be able to be offered to any court reporter that would need it for their CEU. So it is available. I don't have any problem sending that out again. Just and I appreciate y'all's patience once again. So if you have any questions or anything I can help you with, concerning this or anything else that you come across, just let me know, and I'm here and willing to help. Thank you, and I hope y'all have a good day. And thanks for your patience again for my craziness going back and forth.